Hi, it's Giffin Bates here, and today I thought I would continue on from the previous video I posted where I described what I think is the fundamental difference between the first generation of blockchains such as Bitcoin and the second generation of blockchains which support smart contracts such as Ethereum. And to recap, the main difference is that in the first generation blockchains, it is only people who can own assets. You have to have a private key which has an associated public key, and the public key has to, or the public address as it's called in blockchain, has to have some digital assets assigned to it, and then you as the private key holder have complete control over those assets and can decide whether to hold them or transfer them on. In a second generation blockchain, the same applies. You can have privately held keys by individuals and corresponding addresses and assets that are assigned to those addresses, and the same control thing applies, but you have a second kind of entity that can own assets, and that is the smart contract. Now, a smart contract is basically a script or program that is stored on the blockchain. It has its own address. It's known as the contract address in Ethereum, and when you look at it, it looks the same as a personal address. However, an Ethereum smart contract doesn't have a corresponding private key, so there isn't the possibility for an individual or person to construct a transaction to do stuff with the assets that are assigned to the contract address of the smart contract. And as a result, only the smart contract has the authority to do stuff with the assets that are assigned to or associated with its contract address. So then the question is, well, how does a smart contract go about doing stuff with those assets? And remember, a smart contract is a program. The program has functions in it, and those functions can be called by people. So how do you call a function in a smart contract? Well, it's blockchain, it's all about transactions, and the way that you call a function in a smart contract is by submitting a transaction that references that contract. So if we look at Bitcoin, where remember there aren't smart contracts, you have transactions where you have an address with a balance and you submit a transaction that says, I want to transfer some or all of that balance to this other address. And the ledger keeps track of the fact that the balance of assets has changed from your address to the other address. When you call a function in a smart contract in Ethereum, you have a similar kind of transaction. You have your personal address, so you can sign the transaction, and you submit a transaction that is effectively a function call by producing a transaction that is transacting to the contract address. Did that make sense? I don't think I explained that brilliantly. I don't think I explained it well at all. Let's start again. The contract has an address, so what you as a private key holder with a public address can do is you can craft a transaction to say transfer some ether to the contract. It's like sending ether to another address. It just happens to be that the address is not a blockchain address of another person who has a private key. The address that you're transferring the ether to in this case is the address of the contract address. They look exactly the same on paper as personal addresses. However, you might not be transferring ether. Instead, your transaction may contain some data, and the smart contract will interpret that data as a function call. As long as it's constructed in the right way, transacting with the contract, i.e. sending a transaction to it, can call the functions within that contract. So it's a kind of subtle thing, but once you get your head around it, it starts to make perfect sense. And in the next video, I'll talk about the different kinds of functions that a smart contract can contain. And then later on in this series, because it looks like it's going to become a series, I'll talk about some of the things that go wrong, and maybe that'll shed a bit of light on some of the problems that smart contracts have. Anyway, that's it for today. Hope you're finding this interesting and that you'll keep tuning in. See you in the next video soon. Bye for now.